Kangaroo Island is a tourist destination without being touristy, which is part of its appeal. You really have the opportunity to come here, kick back, totally relax, provided that you spend enough time here. There's some people who don't quite put in, like they're only staying for one night and they don't even have two all day. They'll arrive early in the morning, they'll race around, they'll stay at our place, and then they'll race around some more and leave late that night and drive up to Adelaide. And all I think about those poor people is, wow, your memories of Kangaroo Island are going to be just, I drove everywhere. And it's a real shame because the beauty of a place like Kangaroo Island is the fact that it gives you that opportunity to completely step back from an insane lifestyle.
In today's episode, we are going to the land down under and talk to a woman who redefined home from the mainland to Kangaroo Island. I visited Australia this past summer, and it was an extraordinary journey, not only in nature, but in the culture, learning about colonization, the habitats, and the locals. But in today's episode, we're going to go a little deeper on the journey of a very special woman who created and carved out a life in this unique place called Kangaroo Island, a remote island surrounded by nature's untamed wildlife, rugged landscapes, and deep history. But beyond its beauty, it tells a story of culture and what it truly means to live off the mainland. Let me introduce Susi, the heart and soul behind KI Guesthouse. It's a cozy, artistic retreat that welcomes travelers with warmth, local charm, and even furry friends. She left behind the bustle of mainland Australia to create a home on this incredible island. Today, we'll dive into her journey, island life, and why immersing yourself in local culture is the key to truly experiencing Australia. Hi, Susi.
Hey, Deb, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to reunite again.
Yes, absolutely.
But it has been also wonderful to stay in touch, of course, on social media and be able to continue to enjoy your life through your eyes. What brought you from the mainland to Kangaroo Island? How does this transition from a more traditional career to owning and running KI Dragonfly Guesthouse?
I was actually born in regional South Australia in a town called Cowell. When I was 7, our family moved to Maitland on Yorke Peninsula, which was 50 years ago this year. And typical country kid, as soon as I finished school, I hot-footed it down to the big smoke, the city of Adelaide, and undertook some studies. I actually wasn't planning to be a teacher, but I ended up at Teachers College. All I ever really wanted to do was travel. And I'll just very quickly fast forward to the time I met Bruno. I had lived a life. I had had a child. I had done numerous courses. I'm an addicted lifelong learner. When I met him, he'd been widowed for 3 years and he was ready for a change of pace and just a completely different life. So we started talking about where we would live if it wasn't Adelaide. I wasn't necessarily in a rip-roaring hurry to leave Adelaide, but I'd already started considering Melbourne as my new home. So quite the turnaround, shifting from contemplating Melbourne to moving to Kangaroo Island. And I just mentioned to him casually, what would you think of Kangaroo Island, not knowing that he actually already had a connection to the island. And he fell in love and wanted to purchase property. So between the conversation in July of 2016, by the end of November 2016, we were here and moved in.
I enjoy talking to him as well because he loves politics. But were you already considering in maybe the back of your mind to leave the mainland?
No, not at all. I mean, I was actually sitting in Melbourne having just been to a job interview at the Melbourne Cricket Club. And my first thought was, you've left it a bit late, buddy. I'm about to leave Adelaide.
Um, so when Bruno and you said, "All right, let's do this," can you share a little bit about how you first felt? I mean, you might have said excited, but then what came after that? Because we always think of a new adventure, but then it sets in about leaving your comfort zone, thinking about all the things you need to do to get from there to another place. It's nerve-wracking. It's very stressful.
I'd have to say that the stars were actually aligned for us in lots of ways. It wasn't as stressful as it could have been. I mean, there were other life stressors, of course, that's just life. And it was through the process of house hunting that my brain went, I've studied tourism, I've got a commerce marketing degree. And slowly as I was house hunting, I was thinking, Kangaroo Island's a really popular tourism destination. This is my time now. Moving, changing things in my life has never been an issue for me. I don't get stressed about that kind of thing particularly easily. In fact, being stuck in one place is probably a more of a stressing situation for me. While I was house hunting, I thought, this is it. When I was in my mid-20s and traveled to Europe for the first time and stayed at B&Bs, that planted a seed then that I thought, wow, what a cool job this would be, meeting people from all over the world. So I started looking for properties that had a lot of bedrooms and bathrooms, and couldn't believe my luck when I came across this property that had 7 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. And I thought, that could work. I could turn that into something. And then reading the fine print of the advert for the property, it said that it was a backpacker, and I couldn't believe it. And so I mentioned it to Bruno, and he initially wasn't all that keen. It was fairly run down as well. We came over here twice. We looked at different properties, and I kept saying to him that I wasn't going to move anywhere unless I had something that I was passionate about to move for. And he was actually working a government job at the time. And initially he was sort of digging his heels in about the fact that he did not want to purchase this property. But there were a few changes happening, and he was expressing concern and a little bit of unhappiness about what was going on. And one day he came home and just said, I've given my notice and let's go and put an offer on the property. So we came down. We actually stayed a night in room 1, and it was winter time, so it was cooler. In fact, there was a lot of flooding. There was a lot of water everywhere, complete opposite to what's happening now. Sadly, there's not enough water. And yeah, on that very wet and windy afternoon, we signed our life away and made the decision to move, went home and packed our gear. Bruno saw out his contract. We piled our 2 dogs, different dogs to the ones we've got here, or one of them. Lucy came with us from the Adelaide Hills to the island, and we had an American bulldog called Little Boy at the time, and he was just divine. And we brought him on a little adventure as well, and he loved it here too until he sadly passed away about 18 months after we arrived. The fact that Bruno, he had a farm in the Adelaide Hills, and he didn't sell that until a few years down the track. So that made it a little bit easier and less stressful for us to move down here, because our first move was, what do we need now? And then the countless trips. When I think about it, it's only been 8 years. And in some regards, it seems like yesterday. In others sense, it seems like a long, long, long journey. From what we've done renovation-wise with this property, we live in a completely different building that we purchased in many ways. But yeah, just even little things like the fact that now that we've pretty much finished our renovations, I love going to Adelaide and not having to hit 50 shops and come back with the car loaded with things. It's, I can actually go to Adelaide and visit people, which is lovely.
Great. I love the details that you have. So thank you. For most people, it's not as let's say smooth sailings or feelings of it's, it's the next thing. It sounds like you really had a lot of faith in this new adventure.
Absolutely.
I've seen the before pictures, and your after is just extraordinary. That's what gave me, like, that was my actual draw of where I wanted to stay when I was coming to Kangaroo Island. I knew I wanted something either like a B&B, a guest house, or a hostel where it's more community. It's a remote island and you can't get around without certain transportation, and it's very much limited because they want to preserve the environment. And so when I came across your place, I was in Tasmania at that time, and I was kept putting in dates on when I wanted to go, and it was filled, or there was a gap between the dates I wanted to be there. I was like, oh, and I was like, kept looking for other places. I'm like, no, not this. But your place is vibrant. It has art. Feels like a sense of home.
I have to say the energy and how it feels has always been like that. And I maintain it's the people who come to visit here that bring that energy with them. And why not? I mean, you're on holidays, you're here to have a wonderful time. So, that was definitely always there. I can remember in our first week here, a young Belgian lad walking through that door and just looking around and going, it's like home. So we barely touched a thing by that stage. So it is a combination of what we've done to it, but also just the energy from our beautiful visitors that creates that homely feeling.
Can you explain a little of the details that what people see when they walk in the door?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So one of when you first arrive, the first thing that hits you is our long veranda. We actually put the porch on, and that was for a bit of a quirky reason that I've always wanted a porch swing. And when we moved into the property, we didn't actually intend staying on site. We were going to go out and look for a property to live in. But of course, we arrived just as the peak season was coming. We just moved into one of the cabins in the backyard, which at the time didn't have an ensuite needs. And that turned out 1,000 times better than what we even imagined it would. And then you walk through the front door, you walk into the kitchen, there's a great big long table there and an open kitchen, open shelving. So we designed it so that it was easier for people. You know, you walk in there and everything's there. You can see what you need. You don't have to go around opening up lots of cupboard doors trying to fetch things. We're not too far away if there's something you really can't find. And as you would perhaps recall, that if we haven't got it in the kitchen, then you don't need it, because we've got nearly every type of, mind you, I still managed to go into a kitchen shop and find something to buy.
It's for you, you know. Of course, the porch is wonderful, but even the color of your house is inviting. It's this really soft, warm yellow, kind of a yellow that you would want to feel in a place like Kangaroo Island. So it's very welcoming. And then you walk in and you're greeted by Lucy and I forgot the other one's name. Right, Kimchi. And, so you get that, home feeling immediately. If you had any possible question about Kangaroo Island, and if Susi wasn't there, let me tell you, you would be able to find it and then some. The books, the brochures, the tremendous resources for you to just access. And the way that Susi sets up that area, everything is just so well thought of and well considered. Like, I just want to point that out. It's just like she thinks of everything you could possibly want or need and organized in a way where if you're sharing a fridge, you don't have to worry about, well, are they going to touch my stuff? No, because everything has been meticulously labeled. There's the secure door that leads right into all the bedrooms and has all the comforts of what you need, plus local culture integrated into everything.
We observe what guests are doing. We become far more knowledgeable about what it is that we think is needed. And it was a combination of, well, if we're living here, then we have needs and our guests have needs. Certainly, our number one priority was always supporting local businesses. So we bought locally as much as we possibly could. So where there was absolutely no competition, yes, we purchased off island. We purchased a lot of artwork by local artists, and you may recall also down the hallway leading to the bedrooms is some beautiful artwork from Central and Northern Australia from when Bruno was actually living in Alice Springs and spent some time in north part of Northern Territory as well. So yeah, and just adds a really unique, it's not store-bought, run-of-the-mill. The place is extremely unique. Yeah, so we've certainly enjoyed adding to that. And the great thing about Bruno is he's very supportive. He will say to me, I don't care if you purchase a piece of art, so long as you've got somewhere to hang it. I'm not allowed to buy art that I've got nowhere for it to go. So if I see a piece that I really like, then I start rearranging things and go, there, it's going to go there. So yeah.
That's exactly how I would be. I'll make room for art anytime. And as someone that studied art and of course appreciates it's something that was a very unique part of my experience there, because I really took the time to walk slower to enjoy all the artwork. Why do you feel, though, it is important for guests, travelers, people that come to work? Why is it so important to create this kind of environment for these people to come? I mean, for you, it's a pleasure. It's a reflection of who you are. But why do you think that more people should do this kind of accommodation when they go travel, especially to a place like Kangaroo Island?
On a higher level, of course, there's the issue of connection. And, everyone talks about the fact that as communities, we're becoming more and more disconnected. We're connected technologically wise and perhaps more disconnected in terms of our human interaction. So I think that side of it is really important. But most definitely from the point of view of visiting Kangaroo Island, it is an extremely remote, even though we're not very far off the mainland. As you alluded to before, transport, there's no such thing as public transport on the island. Kangaroo Island is a tourist destination without being touristy, which is part of its appeal. You really have the opportunity to come here, kick back, totally relax, provided that you spend enough time here. There's some people who don't quite put in, like they're only staying for one night and they don't even have two all day. They'll arrive early in the morning, they'll race around, they'll stay at our place, and then they'll race around some more and leave late that night and drive up to Adelaide. And all I think about those poor people is, wow, your memories of Kangaroo Island are going to be just, I drove everywhere. And it's a real shame because the beauty of a place like Kangaroo Island is the fact that it gives you that opportunity to completely step back from an insane lifestyle. It's only a 45-minute ferry ride, but the island is around 5,000 square kilometres, so similar size to the island of Bali, but with a population of under 5,000 people. A third of the island is national park. You've got a significant amount of farmland and some forestry. The largest town, the one we're in, Kingscote, is a population of 1,500. And so for guests who come here, it's not only the fact that we're here and we can offer advice about what to see and do, give updated information if we have it. We don't always have it, but updated information about, if a business that's in the tourist guidebook may have closed since that guidebook got printed. But also guests have the opportunity to mingle with other local people. About 12 months ago, I took up the habit of swimming every day. I joined a group of local women who swim daily in the tidal pool just at the end of my street.
One of the most unique and amazing things, I just have to stop there for a second,
yes,
is this tidal pool. Can you explain, just give a little idea of what a tidal pool is, just a understanding, because it's very unique, especially I think in Australia.
So a tidal pool is a pool that it can actually be a little bit natural, although generally speaking, a natural pool will be referred to as a rock pool. So Stokes Bay has a rock pool. Sydney has a lot of what they'll call baths or rock pools. But yeah, so the man-made aspect is that they might build up some walls, but it's by the ocean and therefore you are swimming in the ocean sea, but you are cut off from access to the whole ocean out there, and therefore sharks can't get you. That's really.
And Susi does this at 6 a.m.
6:30, although because we're about to shift into, so we're in daylight savings at the moment, but we're approaching, the days are getting shorter. So we at the moment have decided we'll go down at 7 because it's even still dark at 7. We love watching the sunrise. I mean, it's an incredible privilege to do this. Not just for the fact of the nature, but also swimming with these amazing women from the island. One of whom, there's a 90-year-old, there's an 86-year-old, island born and bred, been swimming in the pool for 40 plus years. Bird life, we see dolphins, seals. We even saw a whale last winter. It's just fantastic. So, I always offer, particularly if a guest, when they arrive, might make mention of the fact that they like to go swimming or they get up early, or we have a sauna here for, we are setting ourselves up to offer retreat experiences for women. And so we've put a sauna in. And so a number of our guests will notice that. And I'll say, yes, you can use the sauna, but there's a little price you have to pay. You have to get up and go for a swim with me first. And every Wednesday, some of the women come from the pool and have a sauna. So, you know, the people staying here who come for that swim or come for the sauna, they meet those ladies. You know, we sometimes are used as the halfway house of somebody who's moving here permanently. So they'll stay with us for a few nights while they are about to move into or look for a more permanent accommodation. So they get to meet local people. Or even we had the experience where we had this gorgeous Japanese woman who she stayed with us end of November. She was moving here for work. We invited her around here for Christmas Day. So she got to mingle, had Christmas dinner with our guests. So we put on a barbecue for them, And then she actually found a job at Uluru, so in the middle of Australia. So she packed up and head off. And about a week before she was due to leave, we had two guests walk in the door. And I said, so where are you guys from? And they were different parts of the world. Sorry, guys, I can't remember what country you're from. One's English, I think, and the other one might have been French. And but at the moment, we're actually working in Uluru. Really? Okay, just hang on. Do you mind if I invite somebody over for dinner tonight? And then get on the phone to Risa. You need to come around and meet these people so that when you move to Uluru, you know someone. And she just came around. She asked 50 million questions. And recently, the other day, I got sent a photo of the three of them together in Uluru. So, yeah. So,
yeah, that's what
a
guest house does. It just somehow connects people, and sometimes it makes, lifelong friendships, but more so people from all over the world kind of, that's what I talked about with an experience I had in Indonesia, where I went into this collapsed cave, but like when we were all lining up at the end to go back up, all of us were from different countries around the world. This one place became a hub of the world. And that's what a guest house, for example, what you just did, is it connects people. And of course, you're getting to know people from places you might not have ever had the chance to. It's wonderful, these connections, and your place creates those things.
It's my favorite part of the role, I have to say, is watching people who walk through that door, complete strangers. And again, technology is fantastic for being able to help people stay in touch. And so you know that they're exchanging details. And of course, many of them are people from overseas who have come to Australia for a holiday. And so they might plan to reconnect at the next destination, or they might be from the same country and know that they're going to catch up again when they get back home. Yeah. Or, just even offering advice to one another about what they did that day on the island. And you see the other people sort of taking notes and taking off to that spot the next day. It's fantastic. It really is wonderful.
Yeah, and of course, like you can see that on Susie's fridge as well. Like you open up your fridge, but like she has tons of her experiences, pictures, and things that kind of allow people to register. I don't have to be so shy, like you're in a hotel, not to talk to someone. You can open up and get to know someone. It's really, it's that detail in itself is a very warming experience. So I just wanted to point out also and again, you're going to have to correct me, but I believe when I went to this local supermarket with Bruno, he was telling me that the average age of the locals on the island are like something like 74 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. He's more obsessed with that statistic, so he's got a better handle on it. But yeah. And I think a lot of regional areas are like that. I mean, and South Australia as well, in particular, they talk about, how do we stop the brain drain? Because the young kids or young adults finish university and all want to head interstate and over to the East Coast. And most people's knowledge about Australia is the East Coast. And as much as I love visiting, I know I was planning to live in Melbourne for a while, but to be perfectly honest, when I was there for my interview and jumping on the tram, I was looking around and I thought, I think I've left this too late. I'm too old for this. I don't know if I want to confront the hustle and bustle of such a huge city, because Adelaide's just so easy. As I said, in my mid-30s, I went back to uni and I was living in living in different parts of Adelaide. Actually, I moved around a fair bit. Had different jobs and was still studying, and I would not have been able to do that in a much bigger city because your commutes would have been 2 hours rather than, I could jump on my bicycle and be in town in 30 minutes and walk up to North Terrace and go to university in my lunch break, just such an easy city to get things done. And same for here.
It's like one of the questions that people ask when you teach English and once you have a grasp of a language is, what are the differences between the city and the country? What are the pros and cons of city life and country life? Now, I don't want you to break that down, but it's like you're kind of sharing that right now is the hustle and bustle. It's when you get older, you kind of want things to maybe slow down a little more. You want to take in nature maybe a little bit more or something that's a higher value to you. But, like what I was just thinking about was I really still need that mix, even though I'm getting older and I want more quiet time. I still want, the culture of a city, like going to the museums, for example, or seeing a live show or certain things that you can't access on a smaller island. It's like you do get to a point where I had my fill. It's okay.
Yeah.
And as you said, you can fly back to the mainland. It's not like you're stuck there.
Yeah.
So it's
we
still
certainly
accessible.
have the best of both worlds. And again, I acknowledge the privilege I have that I can go back to the mainland. There are some people who live on the island who choose not to go to the mainland, and some of that is they simply can't afford it, so that's not necessarily a choice, but some people choose not to because they just don't like big cities. But yeah, for me who enjoys it, when I need to go, I can jump online, book my ticket and go. We do take the ferry more often so that we've got a car up in town. And yeah, I'm the same. I mean, one couple of things that we kind of miss around here is, I mean, we've got brilliant food and restaurants here, but not very many. So, if we were to eat out every week, eventually we'd be we're looking for a different cuisine or, so it's one of the things I like to do when I find myself in Adelaide is I make sure I eat out. And yeah, the arts, the cultural thing. I mean, sometimes I look with envy on something that might be in Adelaide, really kicking myself that they had a beautiful exhibition in the Botanic Gardens that finished up the last night I was in Adelaide recently, but I'd already made plans to catch up with a friend. So I couldn't sort of drop those and go in. I went up to Adelaide with a specific intent of going to see a band. And I did that, had a great time. And then most islanders will tell you that when they go to the mainland for one specific thing, they'll add on 10 other things and they'll squeeze it all in and make it worth their while.
If I'm going to promote Kangaroo Island, one of the things is slowing down. It is not a place to race around.
Mm-mm.
It is not a place to race around. I mean, if you're coming to Australia with the intent of including Kangaroo Island, then make the time to immerse yourself, because I talk about immersing yourself in other cultures. It's a place to take in. It's an ecosystem unique, unlike any other part of Australia. And that's what I mean. One of the amazing things for me of why I went to Australia is because it's not a same situation. Even cities are not same. There is such a depth of history and culture and ecosystem that you just got to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
Lastly, like if you don't have a car on Kangaroo Island, oh boy, like we talked about then you need to get involved in the tourism groups and things like that, which some people really enjoy. But I just want to let you know, Susie, I did get my driver's license renewed here in the Philippines. So when I go back to Australia, I will be able to drive around and really, again, do things on my terms and to take in things without any distraction. But I do recommend, to people, even if you're with your friends or your partner, sometimes just taking a walk, like in the morning, and just enjoy the nature right near the guest house where there's these wild birds and seals and pelicans and so on. It's just, you don't want to miss these little moments. Not everything is just the destination. It's the journey, and the journey on Kangaroo Island is so unique. So that leads me into my next question to you, Susie. It's hard to say what is the one thing people must see or something that you have to do, but perhaps can you share something that people might not know? Like they know certain things, like you could share maybe a couple of the highlight places and why they're popular, but could you share maybe one place that people just seem to overlook?
Wow. So certainly, like when you asked me about what's so unique and what's important for people coming to the island to know, we've actually covered off on that, and that is the fact that it's the slow pace and the fact that ideally you need to organise some transport. In terms of, look, you know, my favourite beach is a place called Western River Cove. And for people who do have a longer stay here and have their own vehicle, we always recommend the North Coast beach journey, where you drive through the centre of the island. You head north when you see North Coast Road and into Western River Cove. And then after you've completely been mesmerised by that place, I mean, you roll up, you park next to the river. There's a footbridge. You cross that. Then you walk alongside the river towards this tiny little cove, and you walk out into it and you're hit with the sea and the colour of the water. I recently went there with a guest. It was a boiling hot day and we were doing the beach hop. We had our bathing suit in the car, and because it was a one piece, I thought, I can't be bothered putting it on straight away. So we walked down to the water and we were both in our clothing, and we just looked at each other, looked at that water, and just threw ourselves in fully dressed. We just couldn't resist it. And because it was such a warm day, by the time we walked back to the car, it might not have been crispy dry, but we weren't dripping wet anymore. And then jumped in the car. And because the beautiful thing about that area too is like when you're driving through the centre of the island, you see the expanse of it, and it's big and it's flat and it's more plains. Whereas this part of the island, it's quite high. I mean, because right out west, where Cape Border Lighthouse is, that's some of the highest cliffs, or the highest cliffs in South Australia. Unfortunately, that journey is a little bit of a rough one. The road is quite corrugated, so you want to have good dental cover if you're going to go on that road.
That's hilarious.
And it's a couple of really beautiful walks out there. You have the Ravine de Cassoir walk. This is like heading out Cape Border way. That's an absolutely stunning walk and comes out onto another beautiful beach. I mean, there is just so many stunning beaches.
It's too many things, right? Too many things.
If you write down a list of the things to see and do here, you could be here for months and still not do it all.
And I would have to say, because again, the change of seasons also changes even,
absolutely,
maybe certain animals and when they come out or when they're mating or, flying over you, it's, yeah. We, as a guest, you can only get a taste of it. I would say, and again, I don't remember the names and I didn't write it down, but the seals to me made a major impact on me. Can you tell me again that place?
So you have the sea lions at Seal Bay.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, the sea lions.
They are beautiful. But then when you...
they're kind of they are a very unique group of sea lions, and they got kind of stranded in this area. Why? Can you share a little story about that?
Well, they use that area as a breeding ground because just off the beach is a reef. And so that means they're protected from the sharks. So they can go onto the beach, they have their babies, and then when their babies are learning to swim and learning how to deal with waves and all of that kind of thing, they are safe. Once they go over that reef, all bets are off, of course. The thing that upsets me the most about sea lions is the fact that, like elephants are such a beautiful, matriarchal and family-based.
Yeah, I love them.
So if a baby elephant gets sick, all of those mama elephants are hanging around making sure that that baby's okay. That does not exist in sea lion world. Mum has her calf. When she needs to replenish herself, she's got to leave her calf on the beach. She goes out fishing. She could be away for a few days. If she doesn't come back, nobody looks after that baby. And I just find that really utterly distressing. But I'm not coming back as a sea lion in my next life, I can tell you.
What animal, I'm just saying, if you could choose an Australian animal, what would you want to be reincarnated to enjoy Australia from that perspective? Did you ever think of that?
It'd have to be a bird, probably the eagle, because they're the king birds. But yeah, I'd say a bird. I always envy, if I'm ever up high or they just have so much freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I mean, I know that just to follow up on that, because I did go on a tour group, which I do recommend the tour groups, although again, as my personality, I like to go off on my own. But a tour with the right person, which Susi could recommend you the right person, you get into the history of the colonization, but how it did affect the ecosystem. But when it came to these sea lions, the reason why these particular ones survived was that they were located in such a place that the colonizers couldn't access them. So while a lot of, unfortunately, their population has been, it's endangered at this point,
Yes.
But this particular group of sea lions survived because, fortunately, the colonizers weren't able to access them. So just to point out that what Australia does, which I did realize throughout my travels through the mainland and Tasmania and on Kangaroo Island, is that there is protection everywhere for these animals, that you can't just do anything you want there, that there are regulations and respect to the land, to these animals. And so you can't see these sea lions without a tour guide, actually. If you want to go on the beach per se, like maybe if you want to just stand far away, you can take a look. But if you really want to get up close and see these beautiful, unique sea lions, which they are, because they're all different colors. They kind of blend into the beach and the area. They have a camouflage to them as well. And it's a very unique experience that I'll always keep with me. So let's move on to a little bit more about the colonization of Kangaroo Island. But again, we don't have to go deep into no one wants to sit and listen to deep history, but perhaps you can share some of the things that are good and maybe the consequences of the colonization on the island that Australia is still trying to get back on track.
A really brief overview. Visiting Kangaroo Island, you'll see that we have places called American River and American Beach. There are a number of places that have French names, and then also we have Flinders Chase National Park, and that's the English explorer Matthew Flinders. He circumnavigated Kangaroo Island, and Nicolas Bourdin was the French fellow who also circumnavigated Kangaroo Island and gave the French places their names, or French named places their names. The American connection is the sealers that they actually, and whalers that came over here and settled and did that. Now, you can get a really beautiful map of Australia that shows you the 200 plus Aboriginal groups that lived in Australia. And like those groups still live here, of course, but, prior to colonisation, that was where they lived and what language they spoke. And they're all very quite different. Like, it's very easy to just refer to the Aboriginal people as being one group when nothing could be further from the truth. If you look closely at this map, Kangaroo Island doesn't actually have anything on it. And that's because when the colonisers first arrived, there were no Aboriginal inhabitants at the time. Kangaroo Island once was part of the mainland, and so at that time, there's evidence that Aboriginal people lived here 10,000 years ago. But when the island separated off, there are 3 different Aboriginal groups that have a connection to the island, whether it's through Dreamtime storytelling or actual stories that have been passed down referencing when they had access to the island. So if you couple that, like bring in the fact that Australia's history with Aboriginal people has been very messy, is probably the kindest word I could use here. There's been a lot of cover-ups. We weren't told the truth as we were growing up. I mean, I was well and truly into adulthood before I knew about the stolen generation. Had no idea. Over time, we introduced what was called an acknowledgement of country, so that when you had a special event, you made reference to the Indigenous people of the area. Well, there's already been backlash about that and a demand that it just stops. Kangaroo Island, in the meantime, because we didn't have Aboriginal people living here at the time of colonisation, it was never any question. Oh, we don't have to do acknowledgement because there weren't any people here that we have to acknowledge. And interestingly enough, while mainland Australia is fighting over the fact, do we even have to do these acknowledgements, we've actually started doing it because, of course, we know that there are these 3 groups that have a connection to the island. We don't necessarily mention, we won't necessarily say their name, but we just make reference to the fact that we like to acknowledge that we are on traditional lands and to honour. And for me, the importance of that is also acknowledging the fact that they had such a great relationship with the land, and we could learn so much from that.
And a side note on that is that the name kangaroo for the animal is an Aboriginal origin.
Yeah, it's funny. As an Australian, it's not something that we learn, which is really interesting. I mean, you hear bits and pieces. Now, I remember there's a town on York Peninsula called Wallaroo that's somehow connected to a wallaby, but yeah. So you hear bits and pieces, but you don't necessarily. Like it's funny how when you travel, you learn. Sometimes we'll learn more about something than what a local would know.
Like there are things that, I've met people who have seen more of the United States than I ever have, and the average American for that matter. It is a matter of interest and a perspective of a place. Like I wanted to see more of their native land and the artwork in the caves and all that. And unfortunately, due to my transportation challenges throughout my travels, I wasn't able to go to those places. However, I made an effort where I could to go to like their museums, but also the tour guides would always share when I would get on a plane and off the plane, they recognize the Aboriginal people. There's a thing that is said wherever you go. When I was on mainland and other areas on islands, there are also signs, like little things that share information about the colonization, about the local people. So one of the things that made me feel really, I felt very proud in a way, even though it's not my country or my people, but I love that things aren't swept under the rug like things in America does with our native culture. We don't acknowledge them. We don't have holidays for them. We don't have places to really say, go here to enjoy and learn about the native people. But Australia really makes this information was accessible everywhere. Like it is like you want to find out more about the history of Australia in your travels, you can't help but bump into it. The locals have a wealth of information, unlike someone that even in, let's say, a hotel worker, the locals know the local everything. If you take the time to, again, part of the slowdown is you take the time to talk to the owners of a guest house or the person that you might meet at the supermarket, any of these local places, they love sharing and they're proud of where they're from and want you to have the most ultimate experience. And that's what makes my experiences as a solo traveler so much richer, because it's not like I have to be going to the top landmarks on Kangaroo Island. It's these little moments that actually bring a huge value to my experience.
I'm the same kind of traveler, Deb, I have to say. Like I just, it's very special to, because, at the end of the day, as much as it's lovely to see a monument, you've seen it so many times in a photograph, it's just like, yeah, there it is. Yeah, and off you go.
Exactly. Okay, check. Yeah.
Whereas an encounter with a human being, you can't possibly begin to imagine what that could turn into and where it may lead you.
It's okay to go travel with people, but to me, when the more people you're with, you block yourself, you kind of put yourself in a bubble away from the local experience. Unless you are, again, with people really like-minded to yourself, you're not engaging in the local experience and leaving yourself open to having that accident of bumping into someone and who knows what it leads to. It's just, it is really what travel to me is all about, where my everyday life in any country, like even here in the Philippines, it doesn't matter how friendly they are, then they are. But when you live a routine life, everyone's in their routine and you don't get to really talk with people. But when you're in this travel environment, it just makes it's just different. And you're able to have these rich encounters that, again, social media cannot ever, ever substitute. It's not a substitute. I mean, I'm glad I can, again, keep in touch with you. But, the conversations that we had in your house, at your table, late night and things like that was like part of the best part of my travel experience. And I just want to remind people, it's okay to feel vulnerable, a little uncomfortable, a little like out of sorts. But the thing is, like, just like anything else, everything takes a habit. And if you are really wanting to have a more intimate travel experience, then opening yourself up to being a little uncomfortable and not safeguarded by your friends really creates much more memorable experiences. One of the things that about the colonization of Kangaroo Island is that, it had made a major effect on the ecosystem that is still a challenge. And I just want to point out to, people to recognize that, yes, these are tourist attractions, but again, taking a tour guide or reading those signs that and things that are around the island to help you understand how fragile their ecosystem is and the challenges they still have with the bushfires, with the koalas, and there's a lot of things that we just don't know that they can fill you in on. But always, to me, Australia is a great reminder of we share this planet and we need these animals just as much as they need us. I just can't help but a shout out to how important Kangaroo Island helps us respect and the need for a balance in our ecosystem, right?
Yeah. And what I find really lovely too is the fact that, farming communities can sometimes cop it for, what they do. But the farming community actually have a really good relationship, generally speaking, with the environmentalists. They work together. The feral cat eradication project was jointly embraced by the agricultural community as well as the environmental community. Because one of the unfortunate consequences of the bushfire, of course, when farmland was obliterated and, sadly they lost a lot of their sheep and cattle, but the ones that stayed behind, they had to feed them something. And so the beautiful farmers from mainland South Australia came down with truckloads of hay. Now, one of the beautiful things about Kangaroo Island is that it's an island, so our ecosystem is a little bit more protected, even though colonisation has had an impact on the island. We do not have foxes or rabbits here, so that's had an obvious positive impact, but we did have a feral pig problem. We still have a feral cat problem. One of the silver linings of the cloud that was the bushfires is that they helped to eliminate a lot of the feral pigs, and the obliteration of the flora meant that they could get out there with heat seeking, like they're flying above, and they could see the pigs. They could make them out because they had nowhere to hide. So they actually got rid of all of the feral pigs.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like the power to me of Mother Nature is like, there's a reason why certain things are there, and there's certain reasons why there's certain things that aren't there. And then when we as humans force our ways on it, there is a consequence on this. And again, we as people on this planet need to think about the long term. So yeah, it's very, very interesting.
It is.
And I learned so much about even the types of trees that koalas eat and the consumption and all this stuff. I mean, I'm just saying Kangaroo Island, let's just point this out, is not just about kangaroos. It's certainly not a place where you're going to just bump into them everywhere. Kangaroo Island is a great name for a place, but the diversity on this island is one of a kind that is just something to add on your list. And certainly going to Kingscote and staying at KI Dragonfly is, to me, I can't help but shout it out because it was like kind of the glue to the whole experience. And where you stay and who you stay with really plays a big role. Not if again, we all have to think about a budget, but if you have a budget to go to Australia, you have a budget to go to this guest house because it's not the most expensive. It's a very reasonable place to be, but it also lands you in a place where it's very accessible to everything that you want to experience. All right. I mean, I could talk to you forever, but of course we all
Yes.
have lives to go back to. First, I just want to, first of all, thank you so much, Susi, for your time, but also, again, sharing some details and things about your guest house, as well as why of traveling to Kangaroo Island is such a unique experience. And also to remind people, Susi had no idea what she was getting into, really, in the big picture when she moved from the mainland to Kangaroo Island. And the thing is that it's possible for you. If you want to start over, if you want to make changes, certainly, it's just taking one step at a time to get there. So with that, I will be putting Susi's guest house information and contact information if you want more information about any of the topics we talked about, but certainly to, stay at her place. She does respond very promptly as well, always helping you out in any way or getting you to the island, as well as all the other things that we talked about, I will link in my descriptions. So I'm going to wrap up by saying Australia is a land of contrast. You have cities like Sydney and Melbourne, fast-paced, multicultural, and constantly evolving. And then you have places like Kangaroo Island, untouched, deeply connected to nature with a slower pace of life. When you go visit Australia, I highly recommend slowing down. It's one of those places that you have to, I think, go visit multiple times. It is too grand to say, I visited the place and only go to one city or one part of it. It's just impossible. Thanks for listening. And please check out my social media in the description to like, share, and stay tuned for all episodes where I deep dive into this journey I'm taking around the globe. Until next time, the best way to learn is by doing. So go out and get your hands dirty. Bye-bye.